Alright, today I wanted to talk about Howl's Moving Castle, which is a Studio Ghibli movie directed by the great and wonderful Hayao Miyazaki. And so with this story, I was rewatching it a little while ago, and it started to get me thinking on this, basically on this idea of how smart do you treat your audience? How smart do you treat the audience? How intelligent do you treat them? And essentially what this is asking, kind of leading to, it's just like, how much do you let them figure out, basically? How much do you provide them? How much do you feed to them? Versus let them discover or figure out on their own. And it kind of got me thinking as far as this story goes, because there's an aspect of it that's very much in play for this story, where there is so much that the story lets you figure out or either doesn't explain, and basically what you have is you have this hanging mystery, this overhanging mystery about the world and about the characters and everything like that. And I really started to notice this, and I'll give you guys kind of an example to kind of show you what I'm meaning. So basically the story starts off and we're introduced to a young woman whose name is Sophie. And she is basically working in a hat shop or a haberdashery, basically. And the other thing, if you guys rewatch this or go through this, realize and kind of be watching for the exposition part, because a lot of the exposition or the world building and other there's all these throwaway lines, which are actually, of course, not throwaway lines, because Miyazaki is a very skilled storyteller, so he understands how to do this, and that if you want something to suddenly appear, you really need to lay the groundwork for it. So there's a lot of throwaway lines regarding the in this story that then come back and turns out like, oh, there's more to that than I expected. So, Sophie's saying, oh, this is my father's hat shop, kind of building on her character in this aspect. And then there's another character who at some point, all covered, is like, oh yeah, by the way, there's this missing prince. And then ... in the story, we end up meeting this scarecrow turnip head looking guy. In the beginning, you obviously don't know that that's connected, but you can kind of eventually begin to figure out. And then, of course, if you rewatch the movie, you can kind of see where the story is leading us. So she works in a hat shop, and the world is kind of like a Victorian, Edwardian sort of weird blend. I'm not quite sure how you'd classify each one, but what we have is kind of like a lot of the steam technology, plus... yeah, kind of like the early 20th century tech, if you want to call it. So, like, it seems like it's like Mauser rifles with bayonets and kind of like steel battleships, but no electronics, basically. So, no electronics or anything like that. It's still very much steam-powered and coal and battleships and kind of this whole aspect that's going on. So this is kind of the world that we're introduced with. And so right at the beginning with Sophie's character, what we begin to see is an aspect of her is that she kind of looks, the visuals on this, of course, are very, very poignant. And what you have is you have Sophie, and you are basically immediately contrasting her with, I think, the mother. And of course, later when we meet her sister, Letty, basically, where Sophie looks very plain. She looks very plain, very boring, very normal from here. And again, when you think about a story, we need the audience to like our main character. And this is how you can kind of do it. And this is one thing that I absolutely adore Miyazaki with, is his female characters are absolutely incredible. He allows characters to be lovely, beautiful women without going down the stereotypical route, the easy route. The easy route is just to hang them out like an object. And sort of that, yeah. But what we have here is we have a very plain, normal, hardworking girl, where basically you can see she's working in the hat shop when everyone's off kind of having fun. She's very dutiful. She's kind of going from here, and then she ends up leaving the hat shop, and then she's going, walking down a path, and then there's two guards. There's two guards that begin to hit on her, and basically they're not necessarily immediately sinister, but it's a sticky situation, because again, you have this whole idea of there's two of them, and it's an alley, it's isolated, and everything. And you can kind of begin to see Sophie's character, where she's very, very strong-willed, where she's like, leave me alone, go away. And of course, they don't really listen because, again, you don't really know at this point to interpret this. Is this some insistent flirting? People who just can't quite get the hint, but they're harmless, or is this going to turn somewhere else? Basically, this can kind of turn into silly, harmless, or this could go potentially a little bit more dangerous because, again, she's alone. There's an alleyway. They're guards. They have all this implicit aspects that's going on. And then suddenly this other man appears and he's got, let's see, gosh, he's going to look so ugly. All right, so how this guy shows up. Actually, I don't think you immediately know. You don't immediately know who he is. So he's just, for right now, he's a mysterious wizard. So I actually scratched that part. But he's a mysterious individual who can use magic. So what happens is basically they up and fly, and he ends up rescuing Sophie. But then it turns out that there's someone after this wizard guy, and these squid-like creatures, these mud squid-like creatures basically are kind of after him, and they have top hats like that. And they kind of look like that. All right, so they're after Howl, and they're trying to chase after him, and of course he's rescuing Sophie. And then suddenly they end up back at her home, and he's rescued her successfully, and then he disappears, basically. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, Sophie, did you fly in?" And she's like, "Yeah, somebody rescued me." And he's like, "Well, you better watch out." And again, they have all these throwaway lines. "Well, it's a good thing it wasn't Howl. He'll eat your heart," basically. And she's like, "What? That makes no sense." And so eat your heart, and then basically she goes back to her hat shop. She's visiting her sister, checking in on her sister and everything like that. And again, you have this aspect where it's this implicit isolation aspect for it. And there's different ways you can do this, and the way they choose to do this is basically what you have the mother and the sister, and they are blonde and beautiful, and you can kind of tell they're not quite meant to be like actually beautiful necessarily, but you can see they're supposed to be conventionally beautiful, where there's this kind of aspect they're appealing to the people around them in the story to a large degree from there. And so what you have is you have the mother and sister both fit this. They're very popular. They constantly have a lot of suitors, boys, men after them. And it's this aspect of, and the other thing that makes it almost even more isolating, this is the key part in the story, is that they're good people. They're good people. They're not like the evil stepsister sort of deal, like Cinderella or anything like that. They're good people. They care about Sophie. And, it's revealed that Sophie is the older sister. And so there's kind of this added extra aspect of isolation to her, and kind of a failure aspect to her is because she's older. She's not as pretty as her younger sister. She's still not married. You have all of this stuff that is implicit, but none of it is ever actually spoken. The audience is just meant to pick up on this and understand this throughout the story. And this is the thing that makes it, again, it's one of those things where it would be easy to make the mother and the sister kind of evil or kind of jerks, but that's not what the story is going after. And the fact is that to some degree, it kind of makes it a little bit more isolating. It would be a little bit easier if there was a bad guy, if there was a villain, sort of deal where you could blame that they were getting bullied or anything like that. But actually, they really love Sophie. They're just different. They're just on different wavelengths, and it's not, no one is at fault. It's just how it is. And it really have this isolating aspect to it. And again, all of this is kind of undertones. None of this is explicitly said like, "Hey, Sophie," whom I have never been able to relate to. It's this aspect of this whole aspect that's going on. And so what you have is we're introduced. And if you kind of following up from my last video, if you want to think about at this point, we're about, 5-10 minutes into the story so far. If you want to ask where the audience is, what we have is we have a lot of questions, basically. We don't know, there's a war going on because of all the guards and soldiers. We don't know anything about this war. We don't know who the squid monsters were that were chasing after this guy. We don't know who this guy is, who seems to know Sophie. That's the other thing. He's just like, "Hey, Sophie," and rescues her. And then he disappears. And then that's basically it. So what you have is you're introduced to a story which is kind of a mystery story. There's all this stuff is just not explained And the story just keeps going on. It's just like, all right, now back to daily life. And it's just, and so we as the audience are kind of introduced to all of this stuff. We have sudden conflict. This is the key aspect for it, because despite the fact that so far nothing has realistically happened, there is a lot of tension. Basically, what you have is you have Sophie, who's trying to figure everything out, or trying to just do her normal life. We have the guards hitting on them, kind of sinister, but we don't really know. Actually is. We have this tension, then this guy rescues her, and then this guy is getting chased by stuff. We basically have all this stuff going on, and we have no idea what any of it means. And moving on. And there's just, again, what is the expectation for the audience at this point? What do you expect the audience to understand? And so then Sophie's going back. She goes back to her hat shop, basically to the hat shop, and locks the door, and then leaves. And then this other lady comes up behind her. And this lady pops up. She's this creepy, fat-looking lady. And she is basically, and again, what are we expecting the audience to understand at this point? She's just like, it's all tacky. So immediately we don't like her. The other thing is that you think about it, again, if you want to have your audience stand up for something, they need to stand against something. This is kind of the classic aspect from here. If you want somebody to have buy-in to something, you need to have them fighting against something else. So what we do is we want to have a villain. We're kind of introduced to another aspect of the villain where you can see, oh, this is who the squidicles belong to from here, and basically we can kind of see why. She's kind of disgusting and gross and of course evil. You know, you have this whole aspect where she is very much not a nice person, you can tell. And so what she calls everything tacky, and then basically she flies through and attacks Sophie and placing a spell or curse on her, and then just leaves. So again, what do we know at this point? Well, there's a war going on. There's a wizard. There's now a witch, and he seems to know her, but she doesn't know him. And there's a witch here throwing spells out, and that's what we know so far. And again, what do we expect the audience to discover? What are we expecting them to figure out? And so what we have then is that Sophie basically becomes old. And the witch basically says, give my regards to Howl, and then leaves. And it's just like, great, thanks. And so this turns Sophie old. And of course, the witch before, she also mentioned, you can't say anything about it. You can't say anything. So you can't speak of it, basically. And so at that point, then we just, again, what does the audience know so far? So the mother returns. Sophie's hiding upstairs, and obviously at this point she's completely old and none of her family understands what's going on, and so she has to hide. And now the question, of course, is what is she going to do? What does this mean? We have this isolation, the idea of isolation again with Sophie. And so what she's going to do is she basically then, and at this point, the other thing is that we don't really understand where Sophie's coming from, what her motivation, what her thought process is at this point from here. So what we've got then is Sophie decides to leave. And it makes sense, but we don't really know why. We don't know why. We don't know where she's going. We don't really know. And so this is the interesting thing about the story that we you can kind of see play out is we don't actually know a whole lot about the character motivations. We're just kind of trying to figure out, and this is what the mystery, the draw of the story that it's acting. Because again, so far it's pretty muted as far as the story things happen. Sophie's got a curse, which has been a big uptick thing, but we don't fully understand what it means or what's going on. We don't really have a clear understanding. You can think of it where, and again, not knocking any stories that do this, but if you think about something like Avatar, where what you've got is you basically have a story of once upon a time, there's 4 kingdoms, and they're over here, over here, over here, over here, and this is the Fire Nation, and they're attacking everybody, and these are the good guys, and these are the good guys, and these are the bad guys, bad guy, good guys, and it's very, very clearly laying out. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's just, what are you going for? What do you want to do? What are you trying to convey to the audience? And with this one, we don't know who the war is. We don't know which side is on. We don't know which side we're on. We don't know which side the witch is. There's a lot of questions. There's just many, many, many questions. But there is the assumption in these breadcrumbs that are laid out through the story that the audience is going to figure it out from there. And so what happens is Sophie heads off because she's old. She can't stay here with her family anymore. She heads off to the waste. We don't really know why. That's just where she's going. Okay. And so she goes there and she meets a guy called Scarecrow, that she calls Turnip Head. And it's a guy kind of like with a little scarecrow, basically. And he's bouncing along and he's fallen over a rock or stuck in a tree or branch or something like that with his sticks poking up. And so she goes and rescues him. And then they see, this battleship. There's always these interlaced tones of things going through it. So where you have, right before she leaves, the other thing that's interesting is that there's this side chatter where they're just like, the prince is missing. And then immediately we meet Turnip Head. And it's interesting like that because if you've seen all the way through the movie, you understand what's going on with Turnip Head. You understand how it plays into this question of the missing prince. But again, we're meeting all this stuff and we're just kind of like, all right, I guess we're going to go for it. Because again, we're looking at Sophie's point of view, and she's just now accepting it. She just goes, I'm old now and I'm senile. I'm not senile, I'm just old at this point. But this is the interesting aspect, is not just physically old. There seems to be some sort of knowledge because somehow after the curse, she seems to know what to do. And we're trying to figure out what she's going to do and where she learned it from. So, and then up ahead, they see these battleships, these big metal battleships that are flying over. So again, we have these echoes of the war. Again, we don't know what's going on with the war, but it's this recurring thing that comes through there. So then Howl's castle shows up and it's this little bitty door. There's this little bitty door from here. That's kind of like a little doorstop, and basically at that point, and this is connected to the rest of the castle from there. But it's just they have this little bitty entrance. I don't know if there's actually railing there, but that's a little bit entrance, and they enter the castle. And once they're in the castle, she goes and there's this guy or this creature in the fireplace who's this little fire guy. He has a little face. He's kind of happy. He's there, and there's a bunch of logs, and he's burning a log. And this is Calcifer. And he is a fire demon, and he is essentially powering the whole castle from here. We begin to see this aspect of it. And again, there's all this question of what's going on, what are the rules of this world, what's going on, just what's going on. But it's interesting because Sophie more or less just takes it as a fact. There's a genre which is called magical realism, and a key aspect is one of my favorite authors writes along there. It's Haruki Murakami, and the aspect of this is wild magical things happen, and the main character doesn't question it. And it really seems to come into play here, and it gives a different aspect. You would never really you would not immediately assume it would make this big of a difference for it. But if you think about it, where you transport to a different world and somebody has to spend the first 30 minutes or 10 minutes of the episode going, whoa, where am I? I'm going to wake up. I'm going to go through a dream. We just skip all that stuff. And it's, all right, there's a moving castle and a fire demon that powers it. Moving on. And it's just, we have this. So there's an assumption that there's an aspect where we're going to trust Sophie's point of view. We're just going to go along with it because she seems capable. She seems to know what's going on. There seems to be some sort of hidden knowledge that she's got ever since she was cursed and she looks old. And so what they're talking about and this is basically, he's like, man, that is one bad curse. Let me guess, you can't talk about it. She's like, yep, and you're cursed. And he's like, all right, well, we'll make a deal. We're both cursed. We'll help each other out. You'll break the curse on me and I'll break the curse on you, and we'll help each other. And she's like, sure, okay. And we don't really understand what's going on. We don't fully really have a great grasp of what's going on. And then the door knocks, and then they have this awesome door with all these different, there's this one, that one, and that one. And basically the knob switches and it controls this door over here. And every time this knob turns, the door opens to a different place, essentially. And it could be a town, it could be a field, basically two different towns. It becomes clear because Marco, this young boy who seems to live there, is just like, oh, Sophie, what are you doing here, old lady? And then he goes and answers the door, and then it kind of continually flips. There's a knob here that continually flips, and you can change the door to what the door opens to. And what we have is we have two emissaries who are going to speak to, apparently this house leads to the wizard Jenkins and to the wizard Pendragon. And they get two invites summoning them to the war. And this is an aspect where Miyazaki, does such a good job of layering the themes in his story. The war is constantly there, and we see it just piece by piece by piece by piece. It's laid out through there. Seeing the battleship, seeing the soldiers who are trying to hit on, or the soldier guards, or who are there trying to hit on Sophie at the beginning. We have this inner layering of the story that's kind of building into itself, and so it's linking together. So it's never too far from it. So then when you pull this as a major theme, it works because it's been there throughout. What you want is something, a story aspect, to kind of be hinted at and then really come into focus. You don't want to just have this aspect where you only see the end point, where you see at the end of this whole thing what's going on. You want to have it throughout, so that when you begin to pull on it, which as the plot develops, the war becomes a greater and greater and greater focus. We want it to be interlaced throughout the story so that when it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, it's not a shock. It makes sense from there. And so then the next part is where Sophie begins settling into the cast. She's basically just like, I'm here now. And everyone kind of is like, oh, that's weird, but okay. And she's like, yeah, I'm the cleaning lady. And this is an interesting part about Sophie's character, which it's always a little bit tricky because oftentimes main characters are meant to represent, the audience. And so they're kind of blank slate a little bit. They kind of are just like responsive, reactive, or anything like that. But Sophie's actually pretty cheeky, if you will. She basically just starts lying. I'm the cleaning lady. And again, we don't really know why she went to the waste. We don't know why she just entered this whole place. There seems to be some sort of knowledge that's going on that she seems to know about, or at least is pretending to know about. She's doing a great job just making up as she goes along, potentially, or she knows something. We don't really know which one it is. And so she's just like, yep, I'm the cleaning lady. And from there, then she starts basically making herself known. And this is what kind of leads into the romance aspect of the story, because what we're trying to build towards is we're trying to build Howl plus Sophie. And this is the tension that we're building towards. And the tension for romances is you need to show the audience what they're like apart. So this is what Howl was like minus Sophie. And this is what Sophie's like minus Howl. And so you can see what they're doing here. And then what you do is you have them cross over. And then they have a moment where they're together. And we get to see how great they are together. How awesome it would be, how much they complement each other, how better it would be for the both of them if they were together and then they separate again. And what this does is you kind of goes, oh, the audience is thinking, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if they were together again? Wouldn't it be awesome if this ends? And then you can start introducing more tension into this aspect of, well, are they going to get together? Is this going to happen or not? And so what you have is you have Sophie as a cleaning lady. She's also not helpless. This is the cool part about her as a character, is that she seems quite determined to make herself at home and make herself useful. So she starts bullying Calcifer and making him cook bacon. And, you have that one scene. We have the scene where Calcifer is fighting against it, and we have Calcifer set up as a powerful character, because what you end up seeing is a lot of the characters are like, oh wow, you made Calcifer do what you wanted? That's impressive. And so we're building Sophie up as a match for Howl. Because again, Howl in this story is set up as he knows what's going on, he's rich, he's powerful, and then Sophie is right down here, basically. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to build up Sophie so they're kind of more or less on the same level, and then that's when you can get them together. It makes sense because you don't want a relationship to be a charity case. You want to prove to the audience that Sophie can help make Howl's life better. And so if you want to do that, you have to build her up as a character. You have to have her some sort of knowledge, some sort of ability, and all this aspect going from here. And then she starts cleaning after she cooks. They cook breakfast. Marco, the little assistant guy, I'm not sure if it's a C or a K, but we'll go with that. Marco is just like, oh my gosh, I've never had breakfast. They're making all these nice and there's these subtle hints that's building Sophie up. Wow. Calcifer never listens to anyone. And basically the other aspect that she does is she's really good at lying, apparently. She's like, Hal's like, why are you here? And she goes, oh, Calcifer hired me. And then it's just like Calcifer's like, what are you doing? You're totally lying. And then she's like, I'll tell him about our deal. If you don't want me to help, then you better shut up. And it's like, all right, she completely bullies him into there. But then she's also gracious. She's not bullying to be mean. She's bullying to get the job done because Calcifer, let's face it, he's kind of lazy. He's kind of lazy, do nothing from there. And then she starts cleaning because the entire house is a mess. And again, this is the idea of complementing strengths. From any romance, what you want to have is you want to have two characters that are better together. So Howl is this amazing wizard, but his castle is a dump. They show her, scurrying out bugs and spiders and centipedes and all this other stuff from here. And so she goes and creates and fixes this whole thing. So basically, Sophie's stocks are going up. She's this awesome person. And then what we have is we start introducing tension again. We had tension with the guards. We had tension with the Witch of the West. And now at this point, everything's kind of sitting comfortable, where we've got Sophie with this really powerful wizard, and it's kind of sitting comfortable from there. And then she starts cleaning, and then Calcifer basically starts asking her for help because he's got this little ice cream cone of wood left. And he's holding on, and he's like, he's basically saying, help me. I'm holding on for dear life. And he's got his little, from there, and he's, begging her for help. I need more wood. I need food. Don't let me go out. Don't let me go out. Don't let me. And he basically, she's just ignoring him. Of course, he's Calcifer. He's kind of just going off and off and off and off. And then Howl comes up and basically says, I'd appreciate it if you didn't torment my friend. And so this is introducing tension. We get tension now. They are together. They're all united in this movement of creating breakfast and cleaning the house and making everything better. And then we have this tension. And you can understand that Sophie didn't mean it. She just didn't understand. But we're still introducing this idea of tension between them. We don't fully understand the curse. We don't really understand what's going on from here. And then Howl disappears. And he goes out the door, the black door. One of these, we'll make this one the black door, and it seems to go to this scary void, scary place. Only Master Howl knows where it goes. This aspect going on, and then he comes back, and he's in this raven form, and he's trying, and Calcifer is warning him. He's like, eventually you won't be able to turn back. This is not good. However much, suddenly insert raven human here. You're not going to be able to turn back to human. So we're introducing more of these elements, but just at this point, we're about 30, 40 minutes into the story. Just think about, what do we understand? We don't understand the curse. We don't understand the war. We don't understand what's going on with Howl. We don't understand what's going on with Sophie. We don't know what's going on. All of this stuff we don't know, because what it is the story throughout from here is going to feed us the answers. It's giving us little breadcrumbs. To find out and understand what is going to happen in the story. We're getting little bits and pieces here, little bits and pieces there. We're getting these side comments, that we're figuring out what's going to happen. And this is what the story does so well, in my opinion, is that it builds up all these interesting characters. It has what we understand, what you need in a good story. What you need is strong characters. You need good characters that are interesting. Sophie, despite the fact that she's completely normal, just a regular girl, she's, clever. She's incredibly clever. She has this drive. She can control Calcifer. She has all of this aspect. Howl is this mysterious, rich rich sort of wizard character who seems to be wanted by everyone. Everyone wants his help in the war, and there's this whole dynamic. The Witch of the West is after him from here, and you have this whole aspect of going on. What do we know so far? But we don't know much, but we trust the characters. We trust, there's tension going on. We trust. We are interested to figure out what's going on. And from here, what you have is then Sophie goes to sleep, and you can see that the curse goes away, and you can see Howl moving at her. So somehow, Howl just knows what's going on. Which makes sense, because again, we met Howl in the beginning of the story, and he goes, "Hey, Sophie," and rescues her, and then disappears and comes back. So Howl seems to know something that's going on. But we don't know what Howl's know. We don't know how he does. It's just kind of this presumed aspect. And then there's a great moment where Howl comes downstairs. He comes downstairs a ginger, and he's like, "My life is ruined." Put red. And there's this great line from here that he says, "There's no point in living if I can't be beautiful." And Sophie's responding with like, "Oh, how dare you? I've never been beautiful in my entire life." And again, this line only works if we've actually established that Sophie is not necessarily beautiful. And we understand what she means because we have this memory of her with her sister, with her mother. These ultra fashion people who are wearing these bright colors, bright clothing. They have beautiful bright hair, blonde hair that Howl is after. You can see because his hair is normally blonde and it's been dyed a different color, or it's not being dyed blonde. And so you have this, and then you have this tension between it because where you have, okay, they're not understanding from here. And you can build this aspect of, they need each other. They need each other. And once you can kind of begin building this in the audience, they want to see what happens. And so what we have is we have a story that we're getting all these little bitty breadcrumbs and bits and pieces of the story, but nothing is explicitly being laid out to us, and we don't question it. The reason why we don't question it is because we have strong characters. We have this interesting aspect that's coming into play. You have all of this intrigue that's coming into play from here that's building and building, and it's fleshing the world out. And the other thing is Sophie's character, which is really important, is that Sophie seems to know what she's doing. She seems to have direction. She's not a weak character. She lies to Calcifer, she lies to Howl. She's kind of very clever. She's playing them off of each other. She's been there for 30 seconds and she's playing them off of each other. Now, it does, of course, seem that Howl knows what's going on or knows what some aspect is going on. But what you have is you have this whole aspect of these are interesting characters. I'm willing to figure out what's going on. And the other thing is these characters are real. Sophie's not invincible. You can see that she has this weakness, this insecurity. I've been ugly my whole life. I've never been beautiful once. And Howl is like vain. He has all this other stuff. And you're building him up as a character where he's seemingly perfect. And then because of Sophie, you can see the cracks. And this is the aspect that really helps the romance part of it, where you want them to be better together. You want them to be better together. They each have something that complements each other. And Howl has all of these weaknesses that Sophie seemingly is able to answer. And Sophie has all these insecurities or issues that Howl is able to work with, and that's where you can really build it together. And what most importantly, it will make the audience go for is they want to see what happens next from there. So, I think that covers everything. I hope you guys learned something, and I will see you in the next one.